Hi friends, Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. I so welcome you to this pro-life MAGA broadcast every day in the morning at 10, every night in the evening at 9. We are coming to you live and we are bringing detailed exhortation and instruction about the midterm elections, what you can do to make a difference. And tonight, we're simply going to talk about the contrast, the difference between what our two major political parties have to offer to you, to me, and to our nation, and to our children and grandchildren, our posterity. What do the Republican and the Democrat parties have to offer? What do they stand for? What do they stand against? What do they say? And how do their actions prove out what they say? That's what we're going to look at in a nutshell here tonight with the help of a number of our of policy differences. We're not just talking about two worldviews. We're talking about a contrast and a conflict between two Americas. Ultimately, contradictory visions that cannot coexist. Two different Americas. Two different ways forward for our country. As a matter of fact, as I will maintain and so many others maintain, a vision to continue making America great according to the principles on which she was founded, and the other, a vision to radically destroy America and the principles on which she was founded and redefine this country and its future. That's how serious the differences are between the Republican and Democrat parties. Very fundamental differences. Now we're going to look at these in a number of different ways. And I'm going to give you the platform comparison, one of our key tools that we offer to you, and if you've been following our work, you know this already, is a party platform comparison piece. We prepare these every 4 years when each party develops and issues its platform, which is a little booklet really, laying out their worldview, laying out their policy preferences and their commitments. And this one-page document summarizes those preferences and commitments simply by lifting quotes verbatim from the platforms of each party. So this is not a recommendation, this particular flyer. It's not expressing a preference for one party or another. It's just letting them speak in their own words about certain key issues facing our country. I'm going to read through this with you. But then after that, we're going to look at a bigger contrast between the parties. Contrasts in what their behavior is leading to, contrasts in what they are promising America, going above and beyond what's in the party platform. So let's get underway doing exactly that. You know, you can sum it up this way. While the Republican Party is focused on improving the economy, increasing jobs, protecting our security, protecting our religious liberty, defending life, starting with the lives of the babies in the womb, the Democrat Party and the left are focused on gender and race. And they're focused on bringing about things like gay marriage and expanding abortion rights and taxpayer funding of abortion. And they're engaged in the politics of personal destruction, as we have seen in the Kavanaugh hearings, a despicable national disgrace that they carried on like fools. And the left-wing behavior, the nut job behavior of the clawing and banging at the doors of the Supreme Court. I'm sure you've seen that video. We'll be showing it to you again in these coming days. And also things that are just despicable, like certain key representatives of the Democrat Party talking about harassing people, driving them out of restaurants, and the fact, like Hillary Clinton says, that for them, there can't be civility until they're back in power. All of these things are deeply disturbing and offensive. And that's what they're offering at the current moment. Destruction and obstruction. We're going to go into this a little bit more. But I want to start with you, brothers and sisters, with this party platform comparison piece. You can find this at a special website that we have prepared called votinginfo.net. That's where you can download this. We've been giving them away. At this point, of course, we're right on top of the election, so the best way to get them is just to download it directly from the website, votinginfo.net. You can find it in English and in Spanish. And this is going to really give us a nice overview. Let me actually read with you now through these quotes that we've garnered from these party platforms. First, the issue we looked at was human life. And in the Republican platform, here's what it says. The Constitution's guarantee that no one can be deprived of life, liberty, or property deliberately echoes the Declaration of Independence's proclamation that all are endowed by their Creator with the inalienable right to life. Accordingly, we assert the sanctity of human life and affirm that the unborn child has a fundamental right to life, which cannot be infringed. We support a human life amendment to the Constitution and legislation to make clear that the 14th Amendment's protections apply to children before birth. Now, friends, that sounds to me like standing up for the little guy, the littlest, the weakest, and the most defenseless. And it does so not because they're saying this is what we think, and they're not even saying this is because of our religious belief. The Republican platform is saying this is rooted in the fundamental legal documents of our country. The fundamental legal documents of America are the founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. And this short paragraph I just read about their position on abortion invokes both of those fundamental documents, our first laws in America. The Declaration saying we have the right to life, it talks about the right to life. And it says, you notice they're making reference to being endowed by the Creator, so this is not a right that comes from or can be taken away by a court, a Congress, or a president. That's why it repeats here the word inalienable. In other words, you can't take it away from somebody, even if you're the Supreme Court, even if you're the president, even if you're the Congress. And therefore, because it's inalienable, no one can take it away because no one gives it except God. It calls for the highest possible protection for the unborn child, namely a constitutional amendment. Because with a constitutional amendment, you're setting that policy in as much stone as our system of government permits. It's not going to be subject to a veto pen or an election of a different Congress who can roll it back, or a different executive order from year to year, or a different court decision. If it's a constitutional amendment, well then it's as much set in stone as you can get in the United States of America. So this is as strong a pro-life policy as you can find. And it really corresponds exactly with what the church has been calling for over all these years. Although, as you see, it does not invoke the church as the source of this policy. Now, let's contrast this with the Democrat platform. Democrats are committed to protecting and advancing reproductive health, rights, and justice. We believe unequivocally that every woman should have access to quality reproductive health care services, including safe and legal abortion, regardless of where she lives, how much money she makes, or how she is insured. We believe that reproductive health is core to women's, men's, and young people's health and well-being. We will continue to oppose and seek to overturn federal and state laws and policies that impede a woman's access to abortion, including by repealing the Hyde Amendment. Now let's unpack that a little bit more. You notice the word that is missing in this particular paragraph that we just read, that is very much present in the paragraph of the Republican platform. And it reflects, in fact, the difference between those who can see and those who are blind, between those who acknowledge reality and those who deny it. The word that's missing is child, unborn child. There is such a thing as an unborn child. The child is real, the child has arms and legs, the child has a head and a beating heart, and the abortion procedure that the Democrat platform says is an essential aspect of health care tears those arms and legs off, stops that beating heart, and crushes that head. But, unless I missed it, there's no word child in here. In fact, it says unequivocally, we believe unequivocally, that women should have access to abortion, safe and legal abortion. Does it say safe and legal abortion in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy? No. Does it say safe and legal abortion if the child or the mother have a medical problem? That's not what it says either. It says they believe in the right to abortion unequivocally, with no doubt or hesitation or limitation or restriction. In fact, they go out of their way to say, no matter if she cannot pay for it, she should still have access to it, no matter how she's insured. You know what that means, right? You and I are supposed to pay for it. And that becomes very clear later on when it says, we want to repeal the Hyde Amendment. Now, this is the first time that is explicitly in the Democrat platform. You know what that Hyde Amendment says? It says that your taxpayer dollars that get dispersed to help people under the Medicaid program and a number of other programs must not pay for abortion. They're saying they want to do away with that. Whether you are pro-life or pro-choice, whether you think someone else should be able to get an abortion or not, do you want to be the one to pay for it? Apparently, the Democrat Party thinks that the answer to that should be yes. We will continue to overturn federal and state laws and policies that impede a woman's access to abortion. Now, what that means might not be immediately clear to you, but if you follow these things day and night like we do and are involved in both the legislative battles and the legal battles in the courts, you'll realize that what they're referring to here is any kind of reasonable law, which, for example, well, let me give you the example that the Democrats opposed very vigorously, this case that came out of Texas a couple of years ago, where the Texas legislature said, we want to protect the women of this state that go get abortions, and we want to require that the abortion facility meet the standards of ambulatory surgical facilities. Basic standards about the cleanliness and setup of the facility, the requirements for the staff and emergency medical equipment and so on. They opposed that because they said if you require these clinics to live up to these standards, a lot of them are going to end up closing, which is quite a commentary on the abortion industry, isn't it? If they have to live up to the standards that govern other kinds of surgery, they're going to close. Why? They don't know how to behave as healthcare centers? Which, of course, gives the lie to what they're saying in the other part of this little paragraph, which is that this is core to women's health. You can't have it both ways, Democrats. You just can't. You can't, on the one hand, claim that this is an essential core healthcare service and then oppose efforts to have those facilities that provide it live up to the standards of facilities that provide healthcare. You can't have it both ways. But since when do they care about whether you can have it both ways? They don't. That's the difference in this question of abortion. Now let's look at Planned Parenthood specifically. The Republican platform says we oppose the use of public funds to perform or promote abortion, or to fund organizations like Planned Parenthood, so long as they provide for or refer for elective abortions or sell fetal body parts rather than provide health care. Wow. They even mention the reality that has been uncovered of the sale of heads, eyes, brains, livers, legs, hearts, the sale of body parts by Planned Parenthood and other facets of the abortion movement. The Republican platform is courageous enough to shine a bright light on this and say, we're not going to be involved in funding this whatsoever. Look at what the Democrat platform says. We will continue to stand up to Republican efforts to defund Planned Parenthood health centers, which provide critical health services to millions of people. Oh, really? What kind of critical health services? So much of the rhetoric has been absolutely contrary to fact about the kind of health services Planned Parenthood provides. They are in the abortion business. If you study their annual report and the growth of their activities and the focus of their funding and their advertising, you see abortion is their heart and soul. Oh, but the Democrat platform, they're just, we might as well start canonizing them right now, these Planned Parenthood health centers. What gets lost in the mix here is that there are federally qualified health centers that far outnumber the Planned Parenthood clinics all across the country. So that money taken away from the baby-killing work that Planned Parenthood does and the selling of brains and legs and hearts would not one penny of it be taken away from women who need health care services. Rather, it would simply go to federally qualified health care centers that don't kill babies. Going on to other things, judges is a very, very key issue in elections. It motivates so many of us. The Republicans say, we support the appointment of judges who respect traditional family values and the sanctity of innocent human life. That sounds like a pretty good guideline for judges, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the Democrats say we will appoint judges who defend the constitutional principles of liberty and equality for all, protect a woman's right to safe and legal abortion. So there they are. They're putting it in there as a litmus test. These judges that we're going to confirm if we're senators in the U.S. Senate, these judges we're going to appoint if we gain control of the White House, they're going to be in favor of legal abortion. Curb billionaires' influence over elections because they understand that Citizens United had fundamentally damaged our democracy. Citizens United was a Supreme Court decision that said freedom of speech also belongs to corporations. You can make a donation, a political contribution, because that's part of speech. It's just more freedom, but they're not interested in that. And see the Constitution as a blueprint for progress. Oh, now there's a catchphrase for you. You know what that means, right? That the judges can rewrite the Constitution to mean whatever they want it to mean. Whatever they think progress is, the Constitution, you see, it's not something whose meaning has to always be applied. No. It's a blueprint for progress. In other words, it's pointing us in new directions. We're going to evolve beyond where we are now. And that's why they can invent out of thin air, or they think they can invent, things like the right to abortion, the right to gay marriage, and only God knows whatever other crazy rights they're going to come up with in the future if they gain control over the White House and the Senate and the courts. God help us all. Religious liberty. Republican platform. We value the right of America's religious leaders to preach and Americans to speak freely according to their faith. Isn't that a novel idea? Republicans believe the federal government, specifically the IRS, is constitutionally prohibited from policing or censoring speech based on religious convictions or belief, and therefore we urge the repeal of the Johnson Amendment. Now, I did an entire one of these pro-life MAGA programs recently about the Johnson Amendment. Look it up. The video is here online. And we went into detail about this wrong restriction on the church. You know, I myself have had to send boxes and boxes of my sermons and my articles, my interviews, my radio programs to the IRS in times past when they were trying to figure out if we had broken any rules about limiting our political speech. Came back and they didn't do anything to us at all. But the point is that this platform is saying we should be protected from that kind of intrusion and that kind of a feeling like we're being limited from the opportunity to speak our mind. Democrats, they say some nice words here about religious liberty, but again, you have to look at their actions to interpret what this means. Our lives are stronger and richer by faith in many forms, just acts of justice, mercy, etc. lifting up and valuing the good work of people of faith and religious organizations and finding ways to support that work where possible. Well, they didn't support our work where possible because remember, it was President Obama and his administration that imposed the HHS mandate that caused Priests for Life, the Archdiocese of Washington, Catholic University of America, Thomas Aquinas College, the Little Sisters of the Poor, and dozens of other ministries and churches, dioceses, and organizations and individuals to go into the court system, ultimately to the Supreme Court, to say we will not obey a mandate that causes us to violate our conscience by providing abortion in our health insurance plans. We had to fight that in court. We ultimately won, but we won for one reason, and that was that the Republicans took over the White House. Otherwise, we'd still be battling against the Democrat idea that somehow they can limit our religious freedom for the purpose of advancing government objectives of expanding abortion and contraception. That's exactly what that battle was all about. Find out more at istandwithpfl.com. That's where you can get all the information about our lawsuit, istandwithpfl.com. Going a little further here, there's a mention in these documents about climate change and global warming. We firmly believe the Republican platform says environmental problems are best solved by giving incentives for human ingenuity and the development of new technologies, not through top-down command and control regulations that stifle economic growth and cost thousands of jobs. Meanwhile, the Democrats are on the bandwagon. Climate change is an urgent threat and a defining challenge of our time. We believe America must be running entirely on clean energy by mid-century. Now, education and school choice, an important issue for many people. Republican platform supports the freedom of you as parents to choose the school for your child, including religious schools. We support the innovative financing mechanisms that make options available to all children. Education savings accounts, vouchers, tuition, tax credits. We support options for learning, including homeschooling. Homeschooling is mentioned in the platform. Career and technical education, private or parochial schools, early college, high schools. So all these options, the Republican Party believes that the government should be providing all this. Meanwhile, Democrats talk about public school options and expanding these options, great neighborhood public schools, high-quality public charter schools, and we will help them disseminate the best practices to others. Democrats oppose for-profit charter schools focused on making a profit off of public resources. I think you see where they're going with that. Let me turn this around because on the other side, we have a number of other issues that we compare. Oh, I'm sorry, this has the same ones on the other side. Let me go to our smaller one. Sex education, another issue. We renew our call, the Republican platform says, for replacing family planning programs for teens with sexual risk avoidance education that sets abstinence until marriage as the responsible and respected standard of behavior. The Republican platform. Calling for something which actually corresponds perfectly to the call for Christian virtue and self-control, not birth control, but self-control, pointing out marriage as the appropriate place for sexual intimacy between a man and a woman, and helping young people work towards that. Meanwhile, the Democratic platform says we recognize that quality, affordable, comprehensive health care, evidence-based sex education, and a full range of family planning services help reduce the number of unintended pregnancies. Yeah, that's been their mantra for a long time, while contraception has been expanding, and leading to what? Leading to more and more abortion throughout the world wherever it is introduced. Obamacare. Republican platform, any honest agenda for improving health care must start with the repeal of the dishonestly named Affordable Care Act of 2010, Obamacare, to simplify the system for both patients and providers. We will reduce mandates and enable insurers and providers of care to increase healthcare options and contain costs. And that, of course, has been done. The individual mandate at the core of Obamacare has been done away with under the Republican Congress. And of course, the Democrat platform praises Obamacare. Again, I think canonization is probably the best word to describe their view. Now let's look at what the platforms say about marriage. The Republican platform says we condemn the Supreme Court's ruling in United States v. Windsor, which wrongly removed the ability of Congress to define marriage policy in federal law. And we also condemn the Supreme Court's lawless ruling. Listen to these words. In Obergefell versus Hodges, in Obergefell, 5 unelected lawyers robbed 320 million Americans of their legitimate constitutional authority to define marriage as the union of one man and one woman. We talked in one of our previous Pro-Life MAGA broadcasts about judicial tyranny. Watch that program too. We went into quite a bit of detail. And you see here a perfect example of judicial tyranny when 5 unelected lawyers can overrule what 320 million people want to do. Before this Supreme Court decision legitimizing gay marriage, there were referenda in dozens of states that all went the same way and said that marriage is between a man and a woman, which kind of goes back to the beginning of human history. Well, the Democrat platform says Democrats applaud last year's decision by the Supreme Court that recognized LGBT people. Of course, you find that in the Bible, you find that in the Constitution, you find that in the Declaration of Independence, right? Oh, wait a minute. No. But it's in the Democrat platform. LGBT people, like every other American, have the right to marry the person they love. But there's still much work to be done. Yeah, right. Of course. There's still much work to be done because the Constitution is a blueprint for progress. We're going to make more and more progress. There's much more work to be done. Because if marriage is not between a man and a woman, well then why should it be between a man and one man? Why not between a man and 2 men? Why not between a man, another man and a woman? Why not between a man and his dog? Why not between a man and a minor? It's not between a man and a woman. And the Constitution is just a blueprint for progress. So you know what? It can be whatever the court defines it to be. Never mind, God, what your plan is. Medical research. The Republican platform says we call for expanded support for the stem cell research that now offers the greatest hope for many afflictions, listen, through adult stem cells, umbilical cord blood, and cells reprogrammed into pluripotent stem cells without the destruction of embryonic human life. We urge a ban on human cloning for research or reproduction and a ban on the creation of, experimentation on human embryos for research. You notice the clear respect for human life from fertilization and the scientific common sense that's following the evidence. The Republican platform follows the evidence and says, it's not embryonic stem cell research that's yielding any benefit at all. It's the adult stem cells that are, in fact, yielding benefit. And of course, there's nothing morally wrong with that. This corresponds perfectly to Christian moral teaching. Democrat platform, we must accelerate the pace of medical progress, ensuring that we must invest more in our scientists, give them the resources they need, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, progress. Yeah, well, we all believe in progress, but you see, there's progress at any price because they're not talking about any limits here about destroying life in order to save life. That's why they are fully in favor of these other immoral practices. There's we quote some passages here about Iran, the Republican platform saying that the administration's deal with Iran it was not good, and of course President Trump has gotten us out of that Iran nuclear deal, whereas the Democrat platform agrees with it. And then foreign assistance, the integrity, the Republican platform says, of our country's foreign assistance program has been compromised by the current administration's attempt, namely the Obama administration, to impose on foreign recipients, especially the peoples of Africa, its own radical social agenda, while excluding faith-based groups, the sector with the best track record in promoting development, because they will not conform to that agenda. We pledge to reverse this course. So what they're talking about is, when we say to other countries, and this happened under Democrat presidential administrations, not under Republican ones, under Democrat presidential administrations, we say to other countries, oh yeah, we'll come in and we'll help you, we'll feed you, we'll build your houses, we'll give you health care, but you have to legalize abortion. And therefore, faith-based groups that don't agree with that morally get excluded from participating in the programs and getting the funding to do their good work in providing housing and health care and education in these other countries. I have been in international meetings where I've seen the representatives of these other countries just so filled with anger and dismay at why the United States under these Democrat administrations would act that way. And look at the Democrat platform when it comes to foreign assistance. We will support sexual and reproductive health and rights around the globe. They can't talk about anything unless they're talking about sex. They could be talking about rainforests. They can be talking about the levels of the oceans, and they got to bring sex into it. In addition to expanding the availability of affordable family planning information and contraceptive supplies, we believe that safe abortion must be part of comprehensive maternal and women's health care and included as part of America's global health programming. Why can't you just feed the poor? Why do you have to impose these synthetic drugs into the bodies of these mothers with contraceptives? Why do you have to fund the killing of their children? Democrat Party. All right, so that's all in this one little sheet. Votinginfo.net. You can get this comparison piece in English and in Spanish. Now, we created a little video showing you this platform. We just got it finished today. We're going to be spreading it all over on social media over the next few days. Take a look at this new little ad about our party platform comparison.
In this year's election, two major powers are battling for power, and they could not be more different. These parties stand for different things, embrace different beliefs, and seek two very different types of America. Their opposing worldviews are found in the party platforms. The Democrat platform supports unlimited abortion, paid for by taxpayers. The Republican platform says the unborn child must be protected. The Democrat platform supports gay marriage. The Republican platform says marriage is between a man and a woman. The Democrat platform supports pro-abortion judges. The Republican platform calls for pro-life judges. At votinginfo.net, you can obtain a one-sheet comparison of the party platforms. It helps voters decide between the Democrat Party that wants to take away the Second Amendment, weaken the military, eliminate borders, promote abortion, and raise your taxes, and the Republican Party that wants to protect your Second Amendment rights, lower taxes, secure the borders, strengthen our military, and protect children from abortion. When you vote, remember, you are not just putting candidates into power, you are putting a party into power. Know what it stands for.
We'll be posting that particular video at our main election page, prolifevote.com. That's where you can get all these resources. Now, you know, as we went through the comparison there of the party platforms, and of course I was giving editorial comment that's not on the handout itself, but certainly it's got to be evident to you, especially if you're a believer, if you try to be a faithful Catholic or a faithful member of another Christian church, that it's very hard to reconcile what we believe and what we try to do as people of faith with the positions that this Democrat platform is advocating. It's very difficult, constantly swimming against the tide, sometimes getting the door slammed in our face. And this has caused more and more people over the years, as the Democrat platform has devolved, has deteriorated, has gotten cancerous and poisonous for people of faith. More and more people have realized this and have begun to speak out. One of them is the Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Timothy Dolan. Now, I want to show you on our candidate information page, which is votinginfo.org. Let's go there for a moment. This is a page that I've talked about in very much detail in a couple of other pro-life MAGA programs. But I want to show you that towards the bottom of that page, there is a link to an excellent article that Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York wrote for the Wall Street Journal back in March of this year, 2018. And I want to just point out, let's go to that article. I just want to point out what he says. He mentions going to the funeral of a woman who I was privileged to know and work with as well over the years, a wonderful African-American woman, Dolores Greer, a fiery preacher herself and wonderful advocate for life. And she became, under Cardinal O'Connor, the Vice Chancellor of the Archdiocese of New York. In the Cardinal's fifth paragraph of this article, he says, Greer attributed her pro-life sensitivity to Reverend Jesse Jackson, who preached that abortion was an act of genocide against minorities. No wonder. She often observed abortuaries were clustered in poor black and brown neighborhoods. And then she goes down to say that, and he was talking about Archbishop Hughes, his predecessor in New York, and then he said these values, the dignity and sanctity of human life, the importance of Catholic schools, and the defense of a baby's civil rights were and still are widely embraced by Catholics. This often led Catholics to become loyal Democrats. Then in the next paragraph he says, such is no longer the case. A cause of sadness to many Catholics, me included. The two causes so vigorously promoted by Hughes and Greer, the needs of poor and middle-class children in Catholic schools and the right to life of the baby in the womb, largely have been rejected by the party of our youth. And he goes on to complain about this. He mentions things that we've mentioned on these broadcasts. Chairman Perez of the Democrat National Committee talking about how it's essential that Democrats be in favor of abortion, and talks about the efforts to expand abortion in places where it's already allowed for any reason. And then he says, it saddens me, it weakens the democracy of millions of Americans when the party that once embraced Catholics, the Democrat Party, now slams the door on us. Cardinal Timothy Dolan. Read the whole article. We've got it posted there in English and in Spanish. And I'm grateful to the Cardinal for making those public remarks. Another colleague who has written an excellent article along the lines of what we're talking about in this program is my friend and colleague Tony Perkins, head of the Family Research Council. He wrote an excellent article recently called 9 Things to Expect If Dems Win the House. Well, this is what we have to understand. What should we expect from a Democrat House of Representatives besides Speaker Nancy Pelosi? And he lists these 9 things. Let me just mention them briefly. Impeachment is number 1. Oh, they're talking about and thinking about and planning impeachment. Really? Is that really how you want to spend the taxpayers' time and money, those who send you into public office in Washington to, I don't know, maybe take care of our economy and protect our country from terrorism, and instead you want to talk about impeaching a president who has done so much for America, impeaching a Supreme Court justice whose philosophy you don't happen to agree with. They're not going to remove these people from office. They're not going to have the votes to do that. It would require 67 votes in the Senate after a trial. I mean, this is a pipe dream for them. And yet they won't hesitate to waste the time of the American people talking about that. And also investigations. Oh, they'll summon with subpoenas members of President Trump's cabinet and all kinds of other people that work for him. Why? Because, well, Russian collusion and what White House lobbyists did and all sorts of other things that they're going to want to get to the bottom of. Investigate, more and more and more. And this is what our time and our nightly news is going to be consumed with. Instead of maybe lowering our taxes and giving us a stronger military and taking care of veterans and doing all the great things that the President and the Republican Congress have gotten done. Abortion on demand, well, you can be sure, like Nancy Pelosi told a group of students recently, we will have a pro-choice gavel in the Congress. Well, of course, it's what you've done for years and years. How about this? Gender-free bathrooms, locker rooms, showers, and sports teams. Gender-free. Gender is not going to mean anything anymore. It means, well, whatever you want it to mean. That particular day doesn't have to be the same thing later in the day or the next day. Oh, whatever it is, we don't have to. You see, and when they talk about we stand for equality for all, they mean for transgender as well. Lower paychecks, oh yes, they're in favor of that. If you like your tax cuts, you can't keep them. You can't keep them, Pelosi says. In a video that went viral, she was asked if Democrats would raise taxes if they won the majority. That's accurate, she replied. Obamacare? Well, the Republicans took out big bites of its effectiveness, Tony Perkins says. But they want to reverse all that. The road to repealing Obamacare would definitively be stopped and blocked and reversed. A weakened military, that's another one of their priorities. Abolishing immigration enforcement, abolishing ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, the people, in other words, that protect you from people and things that should not be coming into the country because they're dangerous. The people who go into communities and uproot gangs that are there like a poison threatening to do violence. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents are patriots and heroes, and they're serving us and they're serving our freedom, and the Democrats would and left-wing groups would abolish that agency altogether. You think Nancy Pelosi is going to come into your community and root out the gangs? Chuck Schumer? Are they going to come in and protect you from these people? And then gun control. It's not just about gun control. It's not just about reasonable protections. It's about doing away with the Second Amendment. That's where these people's minds are at. So this is what, I thank Tony Perkins for his article. Very, very insightful, very, very accurate. Let me show you, these folks are not just saying words. All of these positions, all of these contrasts that we've been identifying, and we'll identify a few more, play themselves out in action in the votes that are taken in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, for that matter. I want to show you a document that I put together. It's just, you're going to just see a lot of red and blue and some numbers. What this represents is in the current Congress and in the previous Congress, so the 114th and the 115th Congress, over the last 4 years, in other words, the various votes that have been taken on matters relating to the protection of children in the womb and the issue of abortion. In every single on one of these votes, and what you have here is the on the left, HR, you see it's or S, it's the bill being voted on in the House or in the Senate, and you have then the votes, the numbers of Republicans that said yes, the number of Republicans that said no, Democrats that said yes, and Democrats that said no. The reason I am showing you this is that it compiles the abortion-related votes, and in every single case, the Republican majority voted pro-life. In every single case, the Democrat majority voted pro-abortion. The number of crossover votes that is, of Republicans who voted pro-abortion or Democrats who voted pro-life, is either zero or can be counted on one hand. These votes break down according to party lines, which is to say to you, this is why people are saying, don't let the House of Representatives go Democrat. Don't vote Democrat, because if you're concerned about this issue, you are not going to get pro-life legislation passed. It just will not happen. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives have passed all kinds of measures. They're the ones summarized on this sheet. Under Republican leadership, they have voted multiple times to defund Planned Parenthood. Don't say that you're disappointed that it hasn't fully happened yet. They did their job in the House of Representatives. They did it. Well, the problem is we need more of those kinds of pro-life Republicans in the Senate. We need more of that, and then it'll get done there too, because the president is ready to sign legislation defunding Planned Parenthood. Some people say, oh, well, we're disappointed in the Republicans. Listen, no matter how committed a person in the House of Representatives is, and no matter how committed a person in the Senate is to these goals, they only each have one vote. So we've got to give them, we shouldn't be sitting back being disappointed. We've got to give them reinforcements. Turn your disappointment into a determination to give them reinforcements. That's what this election is about. In the end, over these last two Congresses, the number of times a Republican member of the House or of the Senate voted pro-life was 4,752 times, versus the number of times a Democrat member of the House or Senate voted pro-life is a total of 62. A total of 62 over all the votes in the House and in the Senate, in this Congress and in the previous, all combined. 62 times a Democrat member of the House or the Senate voted a pro-life position. 4,752 times a Republican member did. Hey, friends, these are just the numbers. These are just the numbers. I want to show you now a couple of other videos going along the lines of this. Our full-time associate, evangelist Alveda King, whom so many of you know and love, she made a little quick video that I think you're going to like. And then I want to show you a little bit of an interview with Cardinal Raymond Burke. Now, many of you may know he served for a while on the Church's Supreme Court over at the Vatican. Now he has other responsibilities there in Rome. But a very courageous man who speaks very clearly about the importance of voting pro-life. Let's listen now to both Alveda and to the Cardinal.
Hello, I'm Evangelist Alveda King, Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn. In Jeremiah 1:5, God tells Jeremiah, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." For people of faith, this truth should end the abortion debate. I believe we are obligated to do whatever we can to protect each soul. I'm asking you to prayerfully consider your vote and to vote for pro-life candidates.
So I wanted to make sure that the faithful would realize that they had a very serious moral obligation in voting to vote for those candidates who would uphold the truth of the moral law, which of course also serves the greatest good of everyone in society. So what is scandal? Scandal is either doing something or omitting to do something that leads other people into confusion or error about the moral good. And here's the perfect example. Catholics who betray their Catholic faith in political life, as legislators or judges or whatever it may be, leading other people to believe that abortion must not be the great evil that it is, or that abortion is in fact a good thing in some circumstances. No, you can never vote for someone who favors absolutely what's called the right to choice of a woman to destroy the human life in her womb, or the right to a procured abortion. This, in the most fundamental and critical area, the protection of innocent and defenseless human life. but you could never justify voting for a candidate who not only does not want to limit abortion, but believes that it should be available to everyone. I would simply say to them, do you follow the golden rule that is taught to us by our Lord himself in the Gospels? In other words, do you do unto others as you would want them to do unto you? Do you consider it really fair to advance some interest you have, which may be good interest, whether it's the environment or whatever it might be, at the cost of denying to other members of society, and especially those who depend upon us completely for life itself, to deny them the right to life? And I think that if most people would reflect in this way, simply in terms of the golden rule, that they would understand that, no, it can never be right, no matter what good that I'm trying to achieve by voting for a candidate who favors that good, but at the same time favors the intrinsic evil, the grave evil of abortion. I can't never justify that, voting for that candidate. And so I would just urge people to consider those smallest brothers and sisters of ours, those fellow members of God's family who our society teaches us to disregard or even not to think of as fellow human beings, but who really and truly are fellow human beings, and to do what's right for them, even as we would want when we were such small little beings in our mother's womb, in the embryonic stage of development or along the way before birth, as we would want voters to vote to protect our lives and to safeguard our lives.
Well, I'm grateful to Alveda. I'm grateful to Cardinal Burke, who has been a friend over the years, for their clear advocacy. Brothers and sisters, what I want to do here now, we're talking about the contrast between what we can expect from the two parties. This is an election that will decide which party is in power in the United States Congress, specifically in the House of Representatives, and of course also in the Senate. And I want to show you some of the progress that's been made just in these last 2 years, up to up to today. And you know, this is an election of common sense. If we're on the right track, and in fact, since 2012, we have the highest answer to that question, is the country going now in the right direction? The highest percentage so far of people answering yes in the last 6 years. If we're going in the right direction, why would we want to change direction? If the party that's in charge of our lawmaking and our policy making in Congress is getting us results, working with this particular president, why would we want to introduce stagnation into that process, where the president and the Congress can no longer work effectively together because one party is totally at odds with him? Let me trace for you, therefore, the kind of progress that we've seen, just in summary fashion, reading what people who are far more expert in these things than I am have pulled together for us. And therefore, we can expect more of the same, of what you're going to hear now. And then I want to read for you a little litany of what we can expect more from a Democrat House of Representatives. In less than 2 years, the president has gotten confirmed 84 excellent constitutional judges on our federal courts, including 2 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court, cementing a conservative majority. We have under him now also the biggest tax cuts and reforms in history, great health care that protects people with pre-existing conditions, these massive tax cuts with also the removal of job-killing regulations, more than has ever been done before, sparking a boom in the U.S. economy that shows no signs of stopping, a surge in jobs, and record low unemployment. Unemployment today is below 4%, and there are more job openings in America than there are people looking for work. In fact, the quitting level is higher. In other words, people feel free to leave their jobs if they don't like them, because now they have more optimism and hope that they can find a better job. The unemployment rate is the lowest in 50 years. It fell to 3.7% in September. That's the lowest rate since December of 1969. Best numbers for women's unemployment in 65 years. The lowest unemployment levels have also been reached among African Americans, Hispanic, and Asian populations, and for non-college high school graduates. It's at historic lows. In these 2 years, in less than 2 years, over 4.2 million jobs, new jobs have been created. And we've lifted 4 million Americans off of food stamps. 600,000 of those jobs have been manufacturing jobs that have been created. After the stagnation of the Obama era, the economy is growing at its strongest clip in years. Wages and benefits are rising at their fastest rate in a decade. Regulations have been rolled back that were stifling growth and allowed American small businesses and job creators to do what they do best. $10 trillion of wealth have been added. The stock market is at an all-time high in its history. Families are feeling the direct effects of this growing economy. Thanks to the tax reform, 9 out of 10 workers are seeing their paychecks grow. At least 6 million workers have received raises, bonuses, better benefits. Starting next year, the average family will save more than $2,000. The tax code has been simplified, doubled the standard deduction, increased the child tax credit to allow people to keep more of what they earn, make filing easier. Consumer confidence is at an 18-year high. And Americans expect business conditions to improve, saying plenty of jobs are available. They also think their own finances will get better. The median household income is up more than 4%. And the other side won't be talking about this because they're too busy trying to get President Trump out of office. Household income at an all-time high. Inflation-adjusted median household incomes in July hit $62,450, the highest level in more than 18 years. And this growth is accelerating. A few more items here. Small business optimism is at a record high. And the U.S. has regained its status as the world's most competitive economy. For the first time since 2008 have we regained that status. The World Economic Forum's Global Competitive Reports, the U.S. scored 85.6 out of a possible 100. There's been unprecedented energy production. On other matters, we've gotten rid of the individual mandate in Obamacare, brought down the price of prescription drugs and being brought down, gotten out of the Iran nuclear deal, protecting Medicare and Social Security, taking better care of veterans in many ways, strengthening border security, getting that wall started, strengthening the military, which will soon exceed any level of strength that it has had to protect you and me and our families. Tough crackdown on China's trade practices with $250 billion in tariffs imposed on them. And of course, President Trump's progress with North Korea. A peaceful dialogue has been forged and there's no more rockets going off and nuclear tests being launched. And he withdrew us from the not only the Iran nuclear deal, but the Trans-Pacific Partnership, forged a new agreement with Mexico and Canada, replacing NAFTA with the USMCA, bullied the NATO countries into paying their bills, and bombed ISIS out of Iraq and Syria, made the capital of the embassy for Israel now in Jerusalem. And indeed, protecting our Second Amendment and cracking down on law-breaking, dangerous, illegal immigration. Now, what can we expect, on the other hand, from the other party? Taxpayer funding for unlimited abortion. Mob rule, throwing out due process, civility, and the principle of innocent until proven guilty. We saw that very clearly in the Kavanaugh hearings. You think that's going to change? You think that's going to stop if they're in control? Against school prayer and religious symbols in public, therefore having men in women's bathrooms and vice versa. Forcing small businesses to act against their faith. We felt the effects of that tearing up the Constitution, creating a socialist state, raising taxes. They want to repeal tax reform and hike taxes across the board on hardworking Americans in order to pay for their new spending. They want to impeach. They want to paralyze Washington and draw the White House into frivolous subpoenas and investigations while ignoring the real problems that their constituents face, and which they send these representatives to Washington, hopefully to solve. Rationing health care to seniors, opening the borders. They want illegal immigrants to vote and to get free health care, sanctuary cities where criminals can run free, and abolishing the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, as we said, ICE. Taking away firearms, diminishing our Second Amendment, criminalizing our right to practice the faith in the public square, imposing more and more and more and more government regulations. You need a few more, don't you? Strangling small businesses, weakening our national defense, and as far as health care, abolish the private insurance market, remove all freedom and choice from individuals, have a one-size-fits-all approach that would jeopardize patients' relationships with their doctors, centralize decisions where you want them centralized in Washington, D.C., right? Forcing people to give up health care plans that they like for a cost of $32 trillion. Brothers and sisters, let me show you a new ad that has been created. It kind of summarizes these things. Let's take a look at the New Democratic Party.
Sooner the better. Sooner the better. That's not answering the question. Gotta get a few Republicans.
You know, friends, you and I can get angry about all of that any time of the year. But this time of the year, in fact, in these next few days, we can do something about it more powerfully than at any other time because we get to vote. We get to vote these people in or we get to vote them out. We get to put in place the people and the party that we believe in and that we think will make the most progress. This is why we have to vote. And I hope this is motivating you and is a tool to help you motivate others. You know, the left engages in all kinds of destructive, distracting, and obstructive behavior. And you know what one of the main reasons is that they're going crazy? Not just because they are in fact going crazy, but also because they don't want you to hear all the good news, which I've summarized for you here today, and which the president is summarizing in the rallies that he's having all over the country, which I want to urge you to watch. We've been broadcasting a lot of those rallies right here on my Facebook page, and we also have a website, prolifevote.com/Trump rallies. prolifevote.com/Trump rallies. Watch them. Share them with others in these last few days before the election, because you'll be motivated. You'll see him go through the litany of progress that we're making under his and the Republican Congress's leadership, and the dangers that we face from the Democrat Party. Now, you know, there's another sign about the fact that people are getting this message that I'm articulating to you tonight. Let me just read a summary of this. President Trump's appearances, these rallies, have attracted far more people, bigger crowds, than those attracted by prominent Democrats. Recently in Nevada, the president had a rally of 8,500 people, and meanwhile, former Vice President Joe Biden campaigned for a candidate in Las Vegas, and a grand total of 500 in the audience. Obama was recently in the same state, gathered about 2,000 people, and President Trump, meanwhile, had a rally in Houston recently where 100,000 people requested to get in at a facility where they could only accommodate 18,000. So you figure out what's going on, right? It's obvious. Let me show you one more video that confronts us with the dangers that the Democrat Party poses to us and to our country. Take a look.
What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You said that, not me. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this shit.
FedUp PAC is responsible for the content.
Well, friends, echoing what our friend Senator Lindsey Graham said, I hope the American people can see through this sham. See through the fog, cut through the rhetoric in this election, and do what is right. Stand up, speak up, defend your faith, your church, your freedom, and your country. Silence is not an option. This is not a time for neutrality, because the attack is on things that are too fundamental. These are not just political differences. These are not just partisan differences. These are not just differences in policy. This is about, like I said at the beginning, two Americas, two irreconcilable visions of America. And only one of them is right. And only one of them is faithful to the principles for which our founding fathers pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Only one of them. And it just so happens, and this is not a matter of political preferences. This is a matter of principle. And that's why I'm speaking out so explicitly to you in this and in other programs. This is not ground for neutrality here. When the very essence of freedom, when the very right to practice our faith, and where the defense of life itself are at stake, there is no ground here for neutrality. Let's not get confused about that. If it were merely a matter of different political preferences, well, then we can say, well, the church is neutral, the church just proclaims the gospel, but that's not where we're at right now. It is not where we are at. So I hope that this program today has given you a very clear idea that we're battling for two different Americas. This election is essentially about those who are in favor of the direction that President Trump is taking our country, building it up, showing progress, showing success, and reaffirming the basic principles of faith and freedom, versus those who simply want to attack him and, in fact, attack the faith and attack America and attack life. The choice is clear. Well, thank you, brothers and sisters. And let's pray together now as we conclude the election prayer that you can find at electionprayer.com. And please spread this program to everyone you can, and spread this prayer to everyone you can. Electionprayer.com. You'll find it in English and Spanish. Let's pray it together. Oh God, we acknowledge you today as Lord, not only of individuals, but of nations and governments. We thank you for the privilege of being able to organize ourselves politically, and of knowing that political loyalty does not have to mean disloyalty to you. We thank you for your law, which our founding fathers acknowledged and recognized as higher than any human law. We thank you for the opportunity that this election year puts before us to exercise our solemn duty not only to vote, but to influence countless others to vote and to vote correctly. Lord, we pray that your people may be awakened. Let them realize that while politics is not their salvation, their response to you requires that they be politically active. Awaken your people to know that they are not called to be a sect fleeing the world, but rather a community of faith renewing the world. Awaken them that the same hands lifted up to you in prayer are the hands that pull the lever in the voting booth, that the same eyes that read your word are the eyes that read the names on the ballot, and that they do not cease to be Christians when they enter the voting booth. Awaken your people to a commitment to justice, to the sanctity of marriage and the family, to the dignity of each individual human life, and to the truth that human rights begin when human lives begin, and not one moment later. Lord, we rejoice today that we are citizens of your kingdom. May that make us all the more committed to being faithful citizens on earth. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you for spreading this. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your commitment to victory in this election. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Join me again tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Evangelist Alveda King. I'm blessed to work with Priests for Life, one of the largest and most visible pro-life ministries in the world. Our whole team relies on your financial support to be able to do our work, produce our programs, and travel the world to advocate for the unborn. May I ask you to support us generously? Go today to prolifedonation.org and give as generous a gift as you can. We appreciate it and will pray for you each day.
Many pro-life people worked hard to elect President Donald Trump. That hard work has paid off for the pro-life movement and the unborn. Here are just some of the pro-life accomplishments of the president and his administration. Number 10. President Trump has called on Congress to pass key pro-life legislation to protect babies and defund the abortion industry. Number 9. President Trump has filled his administration with strong pro-life people in key positions. Number 8. President Trump has ended the HHS mandate, forcing employers to cover abortion in health insurance. Number 7. President Trump set up new conscience protections for those who refuse to participate in abortions. Number 6. President Trump ended the secrecy about which health insurance plans cover abortion. Number 5. President Trump stopped funding the abortion industry overseas. Number 4. President Trump protected your tax dollars from funding abortion through Title X. Number 3. President Trump gave the states the right to stop funding Planned Parenthood and abortion. Number 2. President Trump appointed 2 pro-life Supreme Court justices and dozens of other pro-life federal judges. And the number one thing, the first and greatest thing that President Trump did for the pro-life movement was to keep Hillary Clinton out of the White House. To all of you who voted for President Trump in 2016, congratulations. Your vote paid off. But be sure to get out and vote again this 2018 midterm election so that the president has a strong pro-life Congress to enable him to continue winning more victories for the cause of life.